In this video, we're going to do a very basic field strip. I don't know if you would call it a field strip, but a very basic disassembly and a very basic cleaning. Now that we have shot our gun in the previous video, we need to clean it up and get it ready to be put away. I'm going to attempt to do this video in kind of a point of view fashion, meaning that the camera is in between my arms right here. So I apologize if I bump the camera or there's just movement in the camera. I haven't really ever filmed a tabletop video like this, so we will see how it works out. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, with any gun, make sure it is clear, unloaded, and all of that. So I ended my trip shooting with a dummy round in there, so there should still be a dummy round in there. And the kind of interesting thing about this gun, for how old it is, it's kind of interesting. There is, in this hole, there is a sight or a loaded chamber window, and you can look down in there, and sometimes, depending on if the lighting's right or whatnot, you can see brass down in there, and that's that dummy round that I have. So I will push my bolt catch and open this up. And there's that dummy round. So chamber empty, magazine empty, both empty. Now it's easiest just to leave it like this to get the barrel and magazine tube assembly off. And we will use this tool. I guess it's a superior tool. A lot of times people use these for pipes or something that doesn't have like a Phillips or a bolt that's stripped. I don't know, just something that can grab around smooth, round objects. On this gun, this knurled portion right here is meant to be, I mean, you can get it with your hands, but the threads back here where it screws into the receiver are pretty fine. So you're going to be doing that for a long time, and that gets really hard on your fingers. I don't know if this gun shipped originally with the tool that fits in those slots on there, just like a spanner wrench type thing, but I just use this guy right here. Just slip it over this slick end and start unscrewing. And that noise you can hear, that brr, brr, there is a detent in the stock that is running up against, basically kind of like lands and grooves in there on the bottom side of this cap. And that's what you can hear. I think we're there. Yep, we're there. So the reason you want your bolt back is the bolt binds up with some stuff on the top of the barrel up there, and if it's back and out of the way, it's just easier to get that out. So we've got this gun into two main pieces. It breaks down into really three main pieces. To get to the third main piece, it's actually the takedown feature of the gun. You can do this with this assembly still attached. I just did it this way because it's easier to disassemble. So you've got your takedown knob right here, and it is locked in place by this lever slash plunger. You're going to want to let your bolt down. What I tend to do is just stick a screwdriver up against the bolt there, press your bolt catch, Just kind of let it down easy. Now you can press down on that and unscrew until it's free. And so there are your three main groups to this gun. And like I said, you can do this takedown feature when this is still attached, and I don't know, put it in a briefcase, store it compactly. Just like any takedown gun, it's a takedown for a reason. I guess it's to put it in something smaller. So we will focus on this piece first. So this is the easiest trigger group and buttstock to focus on first. Slide those out of the way. Really, with your trigger group here in your buttstock, take your safety off, let your hammer down nice and easy. That way you don't accidentally pull the trigger and it pinches your finger in there or something like that. This doesn't really get dirty, but I mean, you can go in there with a brush if need be, maybe clean up those threads on your takedown knob there. Clean up that spring a little bit. And then I'm a fan of hoppies, so I just have a rag with hoppies on it. There's a cut up t-shirt. Run it like so. You could maybe put a little drop of oil I like to run it on a Q-tip. Get down into that spring a little bit. And that's that. Maybe a little bit on the threads. And that's about it for that. When you reassemble it, you're going to want your hammer back. So go ahead and put your safety on and just lock that back to the rear. And we can set this piece aside. Next up, we will do the barrel and magazine tube assembly. Maybe just take a Hoppies rag, anything, get that cleaned out. If there's a lot of carbon or anything, you can scrub it off. Just get that wiped down, wipe out or scrub out where your extractor rests, and there's your ejector that I was attempting to point out in the shooting video right there. So as your barrel assembly comes forward, that hits the shell. I'm a fan of bore snakes, so to clean the barrel out, I'm just going to run the old 12 gauge bore snake down there. And I'll do it once on camera. But I usually do it 3 times or so. Just run that through and pull it out. And I usually do about 3 times. I don't know if that's OCD or if that's just what I've determined to be the best. Scrub the bore there, or your muzzle. Get any remaining stuff that the bore snake doesn't get. And that's about it. I'll clean up these threads as well, just so there's no foreign material in there when I'm trying to screw it back on, because it's really fine threads. With my Hoppies rag, I will reach up into the magazine tube a little bit, get the end of the follower there, and just put this up in there a little bit. And next up, we will do the receiver and the bolt. With the receiver and bolt, there are kind of two methods without getting real detailed strip, all that stuff. So the first method is just going to be your easiest if you're taking this gun apart for the first time. Just kind of push. So that's your bolt all the way forward. There's nothing that locks it forward, so you can just press it back with your thumb. There is something, if you go far enough back, you heard that click, there is something, there is a piece, it's a shell, I believe it's a shell stop in there. There's a couple in there. But see, it will now not press back forward. It's on this wall right here, and it's just barely in front of the bolt. So if you do get it back that far, you just reach in, press. Technically it would be down, but since you're working on it upside down, press it up and out of the way, and your bolt can move around again. So the easiest is to basically, I would clean out the inside of those threads, just if there's any foreign material. Run, let me load up on my hoppies a little bit here. So you can just run this rag around on the inside, clean up anything you can in there. It's real gummy. Now you can brush around. This is just your basic nylon brush here. Just, whatever you can. And maybe so it's not soaking wet in there. The hoppies. Give everything a wipe down. And if you want to stay real simple and basic, that's it. You would then reassemble the gun, which we'll do in a second. If you want to get just a touch more in-depth, because I know a lot of guys, or a lot of people, a lot of shooters I should say, like to remove the bolt and clean the bolt if there's a firing pin issue or whatever. We can go into that. So to get the bolt out of the receiver here, there are a couple steps. First off, you're going to get your carrier / lifter, whatever you want to call it, out of the way. Press it down, and this piece here is a cartridge stop. So I don't know if you can see its foot right there. That's in the way of a shell, so they just can't all the time feed back down in there. Timing issues and whatnot. So that cartridge stop has a spring up above it that sits under this ledge of the receiver. The easiest thing I've found, there's a little, it's almost just perfect for a flathead screwdriver to fit in that little gap right there. You're going to leverage down and out, and this top edge just pops out, comes straight out. This cartridge stop is now just loose in there, so it should, with some shaking around, just pop out. And it was sitting in there just like that. So the next thing to do is there's a piece attached to the bolt. Let me move it forward a little bit, maybe you see a little better. So your lifter here, carrier, it has a little foot on this side of it. If you can just kind of wedge a screwdriver down in there, and it's not much, it barely has to squeeze squeeze it in, and depending on where your bolt's at, it just swivels up out of the way. So now this L-shaped piece right here needs to come out because it has a foot or a leg on it that prevents it from going out the front of the bolt. So how you take that piece out is, so it's an L-shaped piece here, wrap around. This circle here is part of that L-shaped piece, and there is a spring and a pin holding that in place. So you're going to push down on that pin, push it in far enough to get this L-shaped piece to drop towards you. I'm going to kind of cover it up so I don't lose that spring. So you'll get it to where it's just out of the hole, but it's still pressing on the inside ledge. And if you just continue to move it down, it pops out. There's your pin. It's fat on this end, skinny tapered on this end. The skinny end goes up, and then this piece just comes out the bottom. So that's that L piece I was talking about. And there's the hole where it's also tapered on the inside, so the skinny end fits up into there. Your spring will come out as well, right there, real small one. And now your bolt just presses out. We will disassemble this further in the detailed disassembly videos, so don't worry about that for now. As far as your bolt is concerned, to get your firing pin out, lift this leg up, press on the back of your firing pin there, and it's got a spring, so it'll want to come out. Press in, rotate this piece up, and then slide straight out. Again, rotate up, slide out. And now your spring and your firing pin will come out of there. You can give it a wipe down or a scrub, whatever you need. I'll just give it a wipe since I've got it out. It's real dirty in here, give it a scrub. And depending on the last time the gun was cleaned, kind of like the first time I cleaned this gun, it had probably been, who knows, maybe 70 years. It was filthy. So then put your firing pin back in, and you can clean out that channel if you need to. Put it back in, and your firing pin has a cut in it, or a divot, so that piece can't slide in like so, but once you push the firing pin in, that piece, maybe has to be rotated right, slides in, down, and that holds the firing pin in as well. So now to get your bolt back in, we've cleaned. We might put some oil. Well, now that it's out, you can clean a little more in there with a rag or a brush. Clean off some of those where the rails run, any of that stuff. I usually, so I've got a Q-tip with oil soaked in there pretty good. And you can put some on these rails here. Just lube it up nice and good. You could probably put some I'm going to take this back off. Put some on this piece here since it does rotate a little bit. When it cycles the gun, that's rotating. Any place that just looks like it has friction, maybe give it a little dab up in there. You can run it down some of your rails a little bit on the inside there. Just a nice light coat of oil after it's cleaned. And then when you insert your bolt, make sure that your lands and grooves, I don't know what else you call them, rails and slides, line up properly. You can put it in there like that, but it doesn't fit. Put that in there. To get your bolt back, that piece right there, it's the same piece that blocks it from coming forward. It also blocks it from going back when it is all the way forward. So you need to reach in there, lift it towards you against the spring tension. Once you get it out of the way, you can slide your bolt back a little bit. So we'll now insert this part back in there. It kind of pivots. There's the edge and then the foot on it. That foot fits underneath that ledge, pivots underneath it. So you'll slide it in, drop it down in, and then with your thumb you can pivot. See how it slides down and up out of the way. You'll pop your spring back in there, just drops right in. And on this pin again, skinny end up. Drop it, push it in there, and as you push it in, you're going to push up on that L piece, so as soon as it clears the ledge, it goes underneath it, and then as you push it all the way, it pops up into that little hole. You can then slide your bolt all the way to the back. Well, maybe not all the way, because you need some room. About halfway, so your shell lifter or carrier can come up. And with this shell stop here, like that L-shaped piece, it also has a little foot on it. It will fit under that ledge right there. You'll stick that there, and it falls literally right into place. And on the top of it, there's a little hole. You can see that. The 90-degree angle foot on this spring will sit down in that little hole, and that spring controls this action. So pop it in there, have that 90-degree angle, find that little hole. If you don't, you might slide back behind it, and if that's the case, just wiggle it, fish it out of there until you get it in that hole. Press, you're going to press this top part of the spring down and in. You can do it with your thumb if you can't. Oh, see, I missed that hole. So you kind of just have to wiggle it out of there. So press down and in. It's a little bit difficult, hard on your thumb. So if you need to, maybe put a glove on or press it down and in with a screwdriver. And then put your carrier down and just squeeze in on these legs enough to pop it back in there. Slide your bolt all the way to the rear and is good to go on the bolt and receiver. So let's now move to putting everything back together. So you've got your three main parts here, and I've got my oily Q-tip that I'm gonna rub some oil down on these surfaces that have friction on them. Just get those nice and good. And you will put together your takedown option first. So you're going to want your bolt forward. This like ball looking joint here will fit into this cup, and that cup is at the very front of the recoil spring that runs down under the tang here. So there's a wide portion and then a narrow portion. So kind of fit those two edges. Start at the wide, press it forward to the narrow, and just maneuver it so that ball joint goes into that cup. Press down on your lock and screw it back in until snug. Hand tight is good. Now press your bolt catch to the catch position. It's kind of hard with the screwdriver, just anything that can push your bolt back now. No, not long enough. I'll need a real long screwdriver. So it locks open. And the reason you do that is because this barrel extension, it's a lot easier to slide it in there when the bolt isn't in the way. So you'll just press it in, line up those threads. And I've never had an issue with cross threading. They're pretty fine, so they tend to find each other pretty good. And then I go back to my superior tool. And just down until snug. So I then take, now that's back together, we will take our dummy round, pop it in there, close our bolt, do a function check. I'm going to test the safety first. Safety works, take the safety off, fired. I'm just going to leave it like that. On older guns or guns that I know are going to be sitting for a long time, I like to leave them with the hammer down. That way there isn't spring tension on that spring sitting for years and years and years, or however long it will sit. So leave that down, and then I take a rag it's just an old sleeve. Take a rag that has a slight bit of oil on it. I'll rub down metal parts, just give a nice thin protective coating before it goes to be put away. And then I don't necessarily like oil on the wood, so I'll just take a dry, clean cloth and wipe the wood down. Get the oil off of it. So there you have it. that is a basic disassembly and basic cleaning of the Winchester Model 1911 SL shotgun. Stay tuned for future episodes as we will be doing a very detailed strip of this gun of the 3 major parts. Those will be 3 separate videos probably. And thanks for watching. We will see you then.